A question that comes up a lot amongst creative people, do you have to live in LA to launch a career?
Yeah.
Especially in writing?
Yeah. You don't have to live in LA to launch a career, but it's going to be harder if you don't in certain ways. So what I would say is, first of all, think about their stages. So the first stage is writer development. Most people start out, they don't quite realize how hard it is, and they have a little bit of an exuberant confidence, which I think is great because it gets you writing. I know for myself, if I knew how hard it was going to be, I don't think I would have even started. And when I'm like, oh, I'm good. This isn't that hard. This is as good as that movie. And then at some point comes the point where someone tells you and shows you you're not close to where you need to be. And then the question is, what are you going to do about that? And so there's the phase of writer development. And I've talked about this, I won't go into too much detail because it's in a lot of the videos that I've done for you guys at Film Courage. But it just briefly is, everyone has inherent strengths, weaknesses, and blind spots. And your job is to figure out, or have someone help you figure out, what are the blind spots so they become known weaknesses. And then how do you attack weaknesses and turn them into strengths? How do you do structured exercises that are a little bit beyond what you're capable of, so you're going to fail, but then you're going to learn from those failures and eventually be able to do it, so then you're going to become better. And if you just keep doing that strategically, you can become enormously better. So the first phase is writer development. You do not have to be in LA. There are advantages and disadvantages to being in LA. There are a lot of classes and workshops and so much educational opportunities in LA. But the great thing with the internet, my workshops are online, video conferencing. I have people all over the world take them. I'm not the only one. There's certainly, if you want to take classes or workshops, there are a multitude of options that you can do while you don't live in LA. Also, in LA, you can go to the Writers Guild, you can go to, there's these events where writers talk. Well, if you don't live in LA, you can watch the Film Courage videos, and online, you have so much access. So in terms of education now, you can do that anywhere. An advantage of LA is you're going to be around like-minded people forming communities. When I went to film school, I didn't grow up in LA. When I came down here, it was a bunch of us. We all had the same crazy dream. We supported each other. We watched movies together. We discussed movies. We read each other's scripts. We really helped each other. And when one of us was feeling down, the other people would encourage them. You can do that anywhere in the world now with social media. You have to put more effort into it, but you can create communities. I don't think it's the same as face-to-face. But I think if you live somewhere in the world outside of LA, you can educate yourself, you can grow your talent, you can form communities. You might have to work harder at it. It might not be quite as enriching as if you were in LA, but you can certainly do all that. And let's not forget, LA is a high cost of living place to live. For people sometimes who live in LA, they have families, they have careers, they have businesses. There's a lot of costs involved to move to LA. So when you're developing your abilities, getting to the point where you can write the kind of script that can launch your career, you don't have to be in LA. And there's an advantage of not being in LA, because the biggest mistake writers make when they're in LA is they keep meeting people in the industry and networking, and they show scripts to people before they're ready, before the scripts are good enough, and they blow their first impressions and they can get blacklisted. So there's an advantage to being outside of LA while you develop your abilities. Now, let's say a writer has gone through the developmental stage and they have scripts, at least 2, that are good enough to get representation and to be shown and start to take meetings. So then let's call this the launching of the career phase. This is where it's very advantageous to be in LA. It's not you don't absolutely have to, but it's very advantageous. So if you're not in LA, at a minimum, you're gonna have to be able to come to LA for 2 or 3 weeks, a 2 or 3 week block, multiple times a year. Because what's gonna happen is your representation is gonna take your script out to various producers, networks, cable companies, streaming companies. Also, they might be shown to showrunners, and there's gonna be a round of meetings, 20 meetings, 25 meetings. Some of these meetings are generals where they're like, we loved your script, we can't buy it, but we just want to meet you, and they want to see who you are, want to make sure that you're someone they want to work with. They want to have a relationship with you. They want to read your next script. Some of these meetings are you're going to be pitching a project. We loved your script. We wish we could buy it. Can't. But we want to be in business with you. What ideas do you have? It's easier to sell a pitch than a spec in the TV industry. Most projects are sold via pitch. So you're going on pitch meetings. And you pitch at a company and then they'll bring you back to meet someone else and someone else. So there's a series of, I met 3 people at Scott Free before I met with Ridley and pitched to Ridley. Or you might be meeting with showrunners who might be interested in possibly staffing you on a show. So there's a round of meetings. And at the end of that round, maybe someone's bought the script or your pitch or staffed you, and maybe not. And if not, you write your next script and you go on another round of meetings. And as my agent said, if you go through 3 or 4 rounds of these meetings and no one has hired you, then you're the biggest a-hole in the room. Like there's something just wrong with you that nobody wants to be working with you. But assuming you're not that person, 3 or 4 rounds of meetings, you're gonna get your shot. So at a minimum, you'd have to let your representation know I can be in LA like for this 2 or 3 week window. And then they're gonna try to schedule all those meetings in those 2 or 3 weeks. Here's the challenge. There might be some great meetings you're gonna miss because they can't fit it into those 2 or 3 weeks. The other thing is very common, the night before a meeting or the day of the meeting, they reschedule. And that's actually often a good thing because as you work your way up, you're starting to meet with more senior people at the company. You could actually have the authority to hire you or buy a pitch or the script. But they are overseeing productions. They have a very chaotic life and they don't have complete control over their schedule. So they're not being rude, but a lot of meetings get bumped and rescheduled. So if you're only here for 2 or 3 weeks, that meeting may never get rescheduled. Or it'll get rescheduled, but you may not be able to do it. Or what happened to me is I pitched to some people at Scott Free and they said, Ridley's out of the country for a month. We'll schedule when he comes back because he has to hear the pitch. And then I got a call like 3 days later from my agent saying, Ridley's in town today. He has a window. Can you be there in an hour? Because he wants to hear the pitch. Now, if I was back in New York or Toronto or Topeka, Kansas, that meeting doesn't happen. Does that mean I never would have sold Metropolis, the pitch to Ridley? I don't know, maybe, maybe not. But the advantage of being in LA is you can do a last minute meeting. And when meetings get reshuffled, you can always attend. So it's not ideal to come out. So what I would say is in the writer development phase, it doesn't really matter where you live. In the launching, if you can come here for 6 months or a year, it's going to be helpful. It's going to increase your chances. I know agents and managers that won't sign someone who doesn't live in LA because it's going to be harder. I know more agents and managers who would sign someone who doesn't live in LA, but if they're trying to decide between 2 people to sign and they feel pretty equal about both of them, and this person lives in LA and this person doesn't, they're going to go with this person and not this person. But if this person is so exceptional, they'll sign them. Also, you can always do meetings over Skype, but it's not the same. You want to be in the room if you can. I have worked with writers in South Africa, in Australia, in Alaska, who have launched careers that did not live in LA. They were able to come to LA, for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, twice a year. They knew there were some meetings that they would probably miss out on, but it was really important for them to stay where they were at until they had a career. So it can be done. It is. I would say it's going to diminish your chances somewhat. Not necessarily significantly, but it's going to diminish your chances somewhat. It's going to make things a little more harder, maybe take longer. But then again, the trade-off for a lot of people is I have a life here, my kids go to school, I own a home, I have a business, and I don't want to uproot everything. So it's a trade-off that people have to make. I would say if you can come to LA, I would. I'd come here for the development phase, but I'd definitely come here for the career launch phase. Now, once you've launched your career, if it's feature film writing, you can live anywhere. I did that for 10 years. I could live anywhere in the world. I see a lot of writers who don't want to be staffed on shows. They just want to sell original material, and they'll sell 2 or 3 scripts or pitches a year, and that's a very nice income. And then down the road, if you do that enough times, one of those might get made, and that could be a very nice income. So if that's the case, you have to come here for pitching season, maybe 2 months out of the year. I know people that are here for 2 months out of the year. You know, they rent an apartment for 2 months, and then they go back to New York, or they go back to Toronto, or they go back to South Africa. Obviously, if you want to be staffed on a show, if you get staffed on a show, you need to live where the room is, you know, and that's usually in LA or sometimes New York, but usually LA. So I would just say, you don't have to live in LA. It is helpful. It might expedite the process. It might make it a little more likely, might make it easier. So if you're on the fence, I would absolutely come to LA. But if you have very strong reasons why you want to stay put, as long as you can be here twice a year for 3 to 4 weeks, then you can do that.
And if someone's here taking meetings and then they have additional time,
Yeah.
what are some things they should be doing? Not just, I'm not sightseeing wise, but
Right.
like in terms of getting to know the industry, feeling the temperament,
Yeah.
whatever.
So it's a great question, and the answer might surprise some people or not. Let me share a big mistake that writers make. I know I would have made this. I was just lucky, so I didn't have the opportunity to make it. So you write a script, and let's say you've really written an amazing, exceptional script. And you'll know because people will want to meet with you. There's a big difference between an agent or a manager trying to get someone to meet with you as opposed to people calling the agent and manager and saying, everyone's buzzing about this script. I finally looked at it. I want to meet them. And the manager's like, well, they're booked for the next 3 weeks. They're like, I will cancel a dinner. I will cancel a lunch. Like, they are moving their schedule to meet you. You'll feel it when you go in a room. It's really exciting. And what's going to happen is, like, someone's going to buy that script, but then there's a whole process for all the deal to come through, or someone's buying the pitch, and it's like it's a done deal. And then 3 months later, it isn't. This happens all the time, and it'll go all the way to the finish line, the very last second, for something you can never foresee or anticipate doesn't happen. And it's now been 3 to 4 months since that buzz from the script. And you were sure this was landing a career, and it suddenly doesn't, which is very common. And that's when your agent or manager says, well, where's your next script? And the problem is a lot of writers, they are not writing another script because they are taking all these meetings, which is it's a full-time thing because pitches take a lot of preparation. You get notes on the pitches. People are reading your script. They're asking about the first year. They have some issues. You're doing a lot of creative work in preparation for these meetings. It's really time consuming. And especially, let's say you live in LA, you're working your day job trying to support yourself. Like, it's exhausting, and no one really has time to do this and be writing another script. And they know they're going to launch a career, but then it doesn't happen. And then the agent manager says, where's your next script? And you don't have one. And this is really problematic for a lot of reasons. For most people, when you know you're going to get a deal and it falls through, emotionally, that's not always the best time to be starting a new project. Not always our most confident place. Secondly, you've got to get a script really quick, or the industry is going to say, you wrote this one script and it was amazing, but you're slow. And they're going to forget about you. Like that buzz you got has a shelf life, and it's less than you thought. So ideally, if everything falls apart, you have another script like in 3 weeks. And I don't mean to say 3 weeks is the magic number, but you want another amazing script soon. And keep this in mind. Most people don't get hired on their first round of meetings. They get hired on their second or third round of meetings because now they've proven they're consistent. They're not a one-trick pony, and they can do this repeatedly. Because there are some people who can write one great script, but they can't write multiple great scripts. And I have seen writers who go through this round of meetings, their project is getting made, there's just nothing, they've got this person attached and this attached, and it's a done deal, and then it's not. And it's 4 months later, and they're demoralized, and they can't bring themselves to write because they feel like that was the best script I could write, and it wasn't good enough. And then their agent or manager's like, where's your next script? And like, I don't have one. And they're like, when can you get me one? And it's like, I don't know. And then you don't have an agent or a manager. So when you're going out on those meetings, especially when it looks great, especially when like this is leading to a career and nothing can derail it. I don't think you should be doing the sightseeing. I don't think you should be trying to take the temperature of the industry. I think you should be taking meetings and writing. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. And so if it doesn't happen in this round of meetings, you have another great script soon thereafter. And if you repeat this process, you're going to get a career. And if you don't repeat this process, then you better be really lucky on that first round of meetings. The very first place I went was scot-free, and they bought my pitch. So that can happen. The very first place you walk in, the second place, the third place gets a deal. It can happen. It happened for me. If it didn't happen for me and I went through that round of meetings, I didn't have another script, and I would have been demoralized, and it would have been really hard to write another script, and I don't know what would have happened, and I might have lost my agent, and I might have lost all that momentum. That doesn't mean you can't start over again, but you actually start over with a strike against you, because they're like, oh yeah, you're a slow writer. Oh yeah, you had an agent, but you lost an agent. These don't look good. These are not good things on your industry resume. So when you're taking these round of meetings, it's so important that you write. And I would say for people who live in LA, if possible, and I know this isn't possible for everyone, if possible, when you're going on that round of meetings and you have a partner, let's say you're married or in a serious relationship, see if you can't pre-negotiate that during that time, you don't have to work and they work and support you and them. Or you save enough money. Because if possible, and I know for some people this isn't possible, but if possible, when you're going on those round of meetings, it'd be really great if you didn't have to work and make a living, that you have two jobs, those meetings and your next script.